And in terms of public health, what I kept hearing all week from business executives and others was testing matters. If the country's going to reopen, they need to have testing in place so they feel comfortable and they're not going to have liability if they reopen their businesses. And President Trump was facing question after question about this kind of issue this week, about testing, about his administration's early response to the outbreak as states continue to scramble for supplies. Here's part of Paula's exchange where she was persistent and the president defended his actions.
The argument is that you bought yourself some time and you didn't use it to prepare hospitals. You didn't use it to ramp up testing. Right now, nearly 20 million people are unemployed.
It's so disgraceful the way you say that. January 30th.
What did your administration do in February with the time that your travel ban bought you?
A lot. And in fact, we'll give you a list.
Paula, you've been persistent all week, pressing the administration for answers on testing, about how it handled February of this year. What's the latest update from the White House, where you are right now?
They're clearly on the defensive on this issue of testing. In the briefing a short time ago, they spent about 90 minutes having various task force officials do presentations, PowerPoint presentations, talking about testing, defending their record on testing. And the headline from these officials is that we do have the capacity in the U.S. to do the testing they need to do to make those local officials, those business leaders, even the president's own medical experts comfortable in reopening the economy. But let's be clear, the issue isn't just capacity, it's also implementation. And over the past several months, the administration has engaged in a pattern of overpromising and under-delivering on implementation of testing. It was 6 weeks ago in the Rose Garden that the administration insisted you were soon going to be able to roll up to a pharmacy or a Walmart, do drive-through testing. Right now, that's not widely available. They also promised a Google website where you'd be able to go on and find places to get tested. That has also not truly come to fruition, and the president famously promised that anyone who needed a test could get one. And right now, it's just not clear why they are not using the full authority of the federal government, the DPA, DOD labs, the FEMA, to issue a comprehensive federal testing strategy. Because we've seen with other countries, Germany and South Korea, one of the reasons they were more successful in containing this is because they had a central national strategy.
Kim, you want to jump in here? I saw you nodding.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that is what local officials as well as public health officials have been telling me all week. One point that was made during the briefing today is that testing is not the end all and be all. That's what Dr. Fauci said. But what is data. No community, no state can implement a successful strategy without data to be able to know where the virus is spreading, where the incidents are coming down, the level of the number of deaths, where it might be a place where you could start to reopen without the data, and you can't have the data without the testing, and the states on their own do not have the capacity to do that. The federal government has that. Now, President Trump came under fire, was criticized very early on for not using the Defense Production Act, for not using other levels at his disposal to ramp up testing weeks and weeks ago. And as everyone has said correctly, he has chosen instead to deflect that blame back to the states rather than take that action. He says he's saving it as leverage against private companies. But so far, the people on the ground said the data that they need, they do not have, and they do not have the means to get it.
Kristen, what about these conference calls, the councils the president's been having all week as he's moving toward reopening the economy? What does your reporting tell you about how that's all gone?
Well, President Trump is really reaching out to a broad swath of people to try to get a sense of what the best way is to move forward. As Kimberly was just mapping out, there's broad agreement that they need to have data in order to do that. Having said that, there is so much pressure on this administration to get the economy up and running. So he's getting a lot of that from the business community, small businesses, the banks. It really runs the gamut. There was a conversation today with Vice President Mike Pence, though I think it's worth noting. They got very heated with Democratic senators saying essentially, you are not answering our questions when it comes to testing. We don't feel as though there's enough of a nationwide strategy here, and that really needs to be in place. And again, that is why you see the administration on the defense during this briefing that Paula was talking about. We know based on our conversations that behind the scenes there is an acknowledgement that they do have to ramp up they're trying to figure out how to do that.
Peter, I don't want to move on yet before we talk about executive power. And you've been reporting on the presidency for years. When the president of the United States claims he has total authority, is that true?
No, it's not true. And I think he heard that loud and clear, not just from liberals and Democrats, but from conservatives and Republicans. You heard that from Liz Cheney, the congresswoman from Wyoming, no shrinking violet her. You heard that from constitutional experts like Jonathan Turley, who was the only law professor to appear at the impeachment hearings just last fall on Trump's side. You heard that across the board. And I think that either got through to the president or got through to his aides anyway, because in fact, the president has a lot of power, has a lot of authority, a lot of leverage if he wanted to use it. But there's nothing in the Constitution that allows him to supersede a governor's order to stay at home, to have people stay at home. In other words, he might have the power to intervene in the case of an emergency, but to intervene saying there is no emergency is a whole new interpretation of the Constitution. Now, that doesn't mean he couldn't pressure governors. He has obviously tools at his disposal if he wanted to, but he basically retreated on that yesterday, and he used the same language he had used on Monday in reverse. On Monday, he says the President of the United States calls the shots. Yesterday, he got on the phone with the governors. He says, you all will call the shots. And it struck me as not only a reversal, the latest we've seen of many, but an effort on his part to continue to send conflicting messages so that nobody can hold him completely accountable for any particular aspect of this if things don't go right.
Lucky me, I don't just have 4 reporters here tonight. I have 2 lawyers, Paula and Kim. Paula, as an attorney and a reporter, what do you make of what Peter just said in your own reporting?
Oh, he's absolutely right. The Constitution is crystal clear on this. The president does not have absolute power that he claimed, and he saw that. The legal, political, and logistical clapback on that was pretty swift. You see these different groups of regional governors getting together and saying that they were going to create their own coalitions to decide on a regional basis when it was best for them to open up. You saw constitutional scholars, again, Peter mentioned Jonathan Turley, and the constitutional scholars were pretty unanimous on this, saying legally he does not have this authority, and logistically, I mean, he was claiming this specifically, a total authority to turn back on state, local economies, schools. Logistically, it's just not clear how he would even do that. That became crystal clear. That's why you saw this swift reversal, and now he's deferring to the states and local leaders. And in doing that, issuing federal guidelines but deferring to the states, he's giving cover to those local leaders who want to get back to business, while also, of course, shielding himself and the White House from any blame if there is a resurgence in coronavirus or new outbreaks.
Kim, when you look at the tension between the president and Governor Cuomo of New York, does it come down to the governor's comments about the president not being a king to this issue of executive power?
Yes, it goes right against, again, that instinct that he has, the president has, that he is the leader in messaging, that everything comes down to him. He doesn't want to listen to experts. He doesn't want to always pay attention to the Constitution, as is the case where he missed the 10th Amendment in asserting that absolute authority. He is pushing back against, he also pushes back against criticism. So it's all that creates sort of the perfect storm and the perfect foil in Governor Cuomo. But what I've heard from other governors, including Governor Baker in Massachusetts, also a Republican, is governors don't have much of an appetite to fight with the president right now. They want to get the materials, the testing, the data, and the resources that they need in order to stop the spread of the virus. And they think that incurring the ire of the president is not always the best way to go. So it's a delicate dance going on there.